Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
I am James Nicholas Adams. I am a young adult middle grade fantasy author, and my first book, Chronicles of Myriad Quest for the Oracle, is a story about an epic adventure and love and hope and perseverance. Jason's best friend disappears when they're little kids. She just vanishes out of nowhere. And when he goes to tell his parents about it, it's like she never existed. All evidence that she ever existed on Earth are completely gone, but he's never forgot about her. And so once he's old enough, he decides to go looking for her again and heads back to their hometown in Ireland. And he ends up stumbling through a portal into another world. And as he is traveling through this world looking for her, he finds out that's where she's been the entire time, and she's been held captive. And so he decides that he needs to go and save her so he can bring her home. And through this, he starts to discover that he is connected to this world, and that he's actually from this other world, and starts to learn more about himself and where he came from and who he really is. So Quest for the Oracle is available wherever books are sold, ebook and paperback. The part that I'm going to read to you is something that introduces you to a little bit of the backstory of this world and the conflict that is being faced, that Jason has to take on himself. Far to the south, near the Seas of the Damned in the city of Thiokol, an evil voice rang through the Black Mountains. "This time has come, my brethren. We fly to war." 2,000 wings beat in unison, sounding like the rolling thunder of the violent storm overhead. 1,000 Daedra flew swiftly and undetected above the night storm, north toward the city of Ajay. They hovered over the great city of angels, waiting for the signal of their fearless leader. The storm grew more violently, and with a single nod, Cael'thas signaled the start of the invasion. With each crash of thunder, Daedra fell on the sleeping city in droves of 100, until only Cael'thas remained. He burst through the clouds as the next bolt of lightning reached for the ground. Screams rang through the city as the great dark prince broke through the ceiling of the king's bedchamber. The king woke, feeling the clawed feet of the large Daedra tear into his flesh. His body burned from the venom working into his blood. The queen's screams blocked out the screams of those angels being killed by the onslaught outside. Hatred and vengeance burned in the eyes of Cael'thas. The angelic king's head was forced to the side to look to his wife. Cael'thas used his free hand and stabbed 2 of his long claws into the throat of the queen. Her screams came to a sudden end, and the screams outside began to grow fainter as the angels were cut down by the ruthless Daedra. "Your people are nearly dead, Beodel. Your reign as king has come to an end, and your bloodline is diminished." Each word emitted from the Daedra's mouth was like the hiss of a snake. He drew back his hand and struck down as the door of the bedchamber burst open. Splinters of wood flew through the air. Aras stood in the doorway, dripping from the rain and holding the sword of his father. The black blood of the Daedra covered the shimmering blade in the darkness. The power of the sword seemed to gleam in Aras's eyes. Lines of anger covered the young prince's face. He breathed heavily as he looked up defiantly at Cael'thas. Bedel's expression changed from a look of pain and horror to one of pity and shame at the sight of his angered son. "No." This last word escaped the king's throat before he lay dead and beneath Cael'thas' massive form. Lines of disappointment were frozen on Bedel's face. Both of the season's warriors stared into each other's eyes, neither wanting to make the first move. Time itself seemed to slow to a crawl as they sized up their opponent. The drops of rain pounded heavily like boulders onto the ground. Aras tightened the grip he had on the sword of his father. Cael'thas let out a low growl. His tail draped over Bedel's body and off the bed. The tip lightly brushed over the cold stone floor, spikes making a scraping noise. Both took flight through the open hole of the ceiling. Aras swung the sword violently at Cael'thas, while the Daedra avoided every attempted blow. Cael'thas toyed with the angel, mocking him each time the sword missed his flesh. Finally, Aras succeeded in making contact. The spiked tip of Cael'thas' tail fell, and Aras caught it in his empty hand. Angered by his misfortune, Cael'thas made a sudden dive for Aras. He grabbed hold of the prince's neck with both hands and threw him toward the ground. The streets of Marinus were muddy, and puddles formed through the square. The rain caused the heavy darkness of the late night to seem even more impenetrable. From towers overhead, high elf scouts watched down over the quiet, empty streets and the deserted lands in front of the city. Ours landed hard at the town square, barely able to keep his balance. Doors all around the square flew open at the sound of the crash, and spectators poured into the street. Only a dark outline of ours could be seen by the onlookers. He was weary from the battle, causing him to stagger. He dropped the dragonish tail and touched his hands to his side. He moved his hand, revealing a cut in his tunic from which the drops of silvery blood fell freely. A bite from the Dater had left him mortally wounded. Trying to ignore the pain, he looked up into the sky. A bolt of lightning flashed completely, revealing Aris to the townspeople. They gasped the sight of his wings, which they had mistaken as a cloak. Lightning flashed in the sky once more, and the start of Aris's right hand was stained with black blood and dripped from the blade. Steam rose from the blood. Ignoring all those staring and pointing at him, Aris prepared to once again take flight into the storm. Just as his feet had left the ground, he was forced back down by Kael'thas. The scaly black skin of the new creature shined in the light from the surrounding buildings, making Kael'thas look more sinister. His tail was wrapped partly around the body, the end missing. Sharp claws protruded out of his feet, and he dug them into the skin of Aris's shoulders, trying to keep him from standing. His eyes burned red. All of his attempts to keep Aris down were failing. Kael'thas was thrown off of Aris and landed on his hands and feet, sliding in the mud, skidding to a stop against a building. When Aris tried to strike, the Daedra spun around and struck him with his tail, knocking the wounded angel back to the ground. Kael'thas leapt at Aris, but at the same moment, the prince blocked him with his wings and threw Kael'thas away from him. The creature half leapt, half flew from the winged man, spinning around in air and landing in the ground, poised and ready to strike. The winged man pushed himself up, kneeling weakly on the ground. He stretched his enormous wings and shook off the mud that had covered them. When Aris did this, it revealed something wrapped in a strange cloth behind his back. Both titans stood and stared deep into each other's eyes as if testing the other for fatigue. Aris stood to his full height, not giving away the severe pain from the many wounds inflicted on him. Both standing over 7 feet tall, circled about, waiting for the other to make the first move. The deep, menacing voice of Kael'thas broke the silence of the pause in the battle, sending chills up the spines of the mortals. "You shall not fly away this time, Aris." Kael'thas' mocking tone filled Aris's mind with anger. "If you do, I will kill every soul in this pathetic town, so you can die quickly tonight, or run like a coward and die slowly with the thoughts of the dire blood on your hands." Aris's voice sent a wave of peace and calm over the people, though it carried a sense of sternness and anger. "You will not harm these people tonight, not ever. I will stay and finish this, Kael'thas, even in my weakened state. But unlike you, I will not destroy your race to achieve vengeance. My daughter will be able to bring back our people in time. After you are gone, my people will flourish once more, and allegiance will be formed between the angels and Daedra. Peace will reign once you are gone, Kael'thas. Without your influence, your race will not hold to the evil ways you have brought upon them." With these words, the battle exploded back to life. Kael'thas leapt at Aris with such force and speed it knocked him back. Aris shifted his weight forward and slid backward in the mud on his hands and feet. His wings remained unmoved, held tightly in place over the bundle on his back. He pushed himself up and slashed at Kael'thas, cutting the creature's arm deeply with the tip of the king's blade. Kael'thas let out a shriek of pain. The Daedra leapt into the air, attempting to land on the angel's broad shoulders once more. Aris bent down and grabbed the discarded tail, then swung it up, hitting the Daedric prince in the face and knocking him onto his back. Before Kael'thas could stand, Aris stepped on his chest, pinning the creature to the ground. Aris put his sword up to Kael'thas' throat. Anger glowed like fire deep in the eyes of the mighty angel. "I could kill you now without a single thought." The Daedra closed his eyes, anticipating the fall of the blade that would end his mortal life. Aris lowered his voice and peered deep in Kael'thas' eyes, seeing the fear therein. "I am, however, better than you. I will show you compassion and let you live. Leave these people and never return. If you do not, I swear on the souls of my people, my wrath will fall hard upon you and your entire race." Aris stabbed Kael'thas in the shoulder to discourage him from attacking again and let him up. Kael'thas, holding his wound, stood and turned to leave. "Wait," Aris said. The Daedra stopped and turned around. Aris threw the tail at Kael'thas' feet. "Don't forget what I told you." Kael'thas picked up the tail and fled into the dark of the night.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm your host, DC, and I'm thrilled you guys are joining us today. If you are new to the podcast, go ahead and make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're here with brand new authors every Monday that you don't want to miss. If you're interested in giving us more love and bringing more authors to your listening station, go ahead, join the Patreon community, become a Patreon junkie. We love to hear from you. You also get to see the unedited version of all of our interviews, so you don't want to miss it. And because you guys are here to see another amazing author, let's bring him on. Hello, Mr. James. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing, Ms. Gomez?
I am wonderful. Call me DC. I feel very
All right,
formal.
TC sounds good.
How are you doing? Everything wonderful on your side?
It is. It's been a wild ride. I'm excited to be here and grateful that you could get me in. And I'm excited to talk to you and talk to your readers and kind of introduce more people to my stories. So
let's start with congratulations. New book, exciting, new adventure. You're doing young adult and middle grade, which I think is such a fabulous age. I need to know, what made you decide to pick that? Because you could have done anything with the story.
I really could. So I fell in love with like middle grade and young adult fantasy when I was a kid. I'm autistic. This is like something that was as more of a recent discovery. So my entire childhood, growing up, everything, I just felt like I never fit in. I had friends and everything, but I never felt like I belonged anywhere. The world didn't make sense to me. A lot of things were really confusing. And once I discovered reading and books, and especially fantasy, the world started to make a little more sense to me. I learned like jumping back and forth between adult and young adult and middle grade fantasy and stuff. I found out middle grade and young adult are really the best for understanding the world, because the stories, they try to help you relate so well with the characters and connect with that character to make yourself, even with Quest for the Oracle, the whole time where Jason is waiting to go look for Christine, he doesn't feel like he belongs there. He feels out of place in the world. And that's exactly how I felt when I started writing this story. My imagination running wild and thinking like, well, what if I was from another world? What would that be like? What if I had wings? What if I could fly? What would my life be if it was in a different type of a world? What if I really don't belong here? What if I'm from somewhere else? And that's why I feel so out of place. And that's why I started writing this back in high school and started writing out the story and building this world and just imagining how my life could be different if it was in a fantasy world. And as I grew into adulthood and stuff, I wanted to make sure that the stories that I were writing would do the same thing for my readers, is help them feel like they had somewhere that they belonged, that they had a community, that they weren't alone. There are other people that are like them. They can belong somewhere and fit in how they want to and be themselves.
It's such a powerful message, because I think sometimes we forget that young adult books have a lot of first times, everything. At that age, your first kiss, your first meeting, going to high school, everything's a first and everything's bigger than life. And sometimes we forget, I'm like, that period's really small when we compare it to the rest of our life, but it has such a huge and fundamental shaping of who we are as adults later on. So I'm loving that you took your experiences and you morphed them into these books, into these characters. Question is, you said you started writing this in high school. Where exactly that idea come from? What is that idea of this world and why? Because we got ages going on and we got these battles and everything's happening. Tell us, what is going on here?
So it started out with a dream. And in the dream, I was standing at the top of this waterfall with this like really cool city behind me. And that's the Angel City that's in this story. And I just look out and I jump off the cliff. I have no idea why. Like I had no motivation. And I jump off the cliff, and then all of a sudden I have wings that spread out behind me, and I'm flying and soaring over this world and just kind of seeing the city that's down below that the angels have been watching over, seeing this entire world just open up in front of me before my eyes, and flying all the way to where the dragon city is, where they have taken refuge and spent their entire time plotting this revenge. And I just see the skies go dark, and just this flood of these dragon creatures, the Daedra, basically like, it's almost like their humanish form, just coming out towards me, ready to fight. And it was just the craziest thing. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm one of those that every single one of my story ideas, all of the work in progress files and stuff that I have amassed over the years have all started with a dream. And it's always some scene like that where it's just super played out. And I like to spend a lot of time thinking about those and like, okay, is this a story that I can love and enjoy and share with people? And the way that my imagination works is it's almost like a hologram world that just is out before me, like 3D hologram world that I can see as I'm sitting and thinking about this, where I can just zoom in on certain parts and see different stories and stuff that are going on in different parts of the worlds. And it's just starts out with a dream, and I just keep growing it bigger and bigger the more time I spend on it.
I am so jealous because my dreams are not nearly as exciting, and then I can't remember them. So anytime everybody goes like, I started with a dream, I'm like, man, my dreams are slacking. We need to commit to something because this is not working out. Love it. I'm glad that you described your imagination as a hologram and that you're able to go through one scene to another to bring this to life. Because I want to know, where is book 2? Because you're working on book 2, is coming out next year. Where is that story leading? You're talking about a series and that Chronicles. Exactly. I need to know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so book 1, obviously, it's Jason trying to find Christine. And this isn't really going to ruin it because book 2 is coming out and it's Jason and Christine. And now they have twin boys. And Christine feels like something bad is going to happen. She's like the oracle of this world, Myriad. And she just keeps feeling, she has no idea what it is, but she just has this feeling that something bad is going to happen. And so she tells Jason, like, we need to take the boys and we need to return to Earth. They say their goodbyes and they go back through the portal and make their way back to Jason's adoptive parents back on Earth. And I'll say one thing, it has been really fun imagining what a 10-year-old boy would see and think as he first experiences New York City and hot dogs and all of this technology and stuff that has never been an idea, and just kind of imagining watching that world unfold through their eyes as I've been introducing these characters. But then you also have Kael'thas, who was part of this old war from decades ago, that he wants to finish this war back and he wants to get his revenge on angels and humans. And so he goes after them and tries to make his way back to Earth. I will leave it there and just kind of leave that as far as this is where the story is going. And in the end, it's going to be 4, maybe 5 books. You're a writer, you know, once you start writing something, it can grow bigger than you originally expected. So it's planned for 4, but I could see where book 4 could expand into a 5th book.
I think that's the beauty about writing, is creating this universe and then seeing where your characters are going to take them and where these plot lines are going to go. And where you think, I'm like, okay, we're going to wrap it up here. And they go, but they're not done talking. So I love it. So much fun. You're going from a magical world back to the real world. How was it for you to transition as a writer in those both different universes and keep them straight?
It's been different for me. The fantasy stories that I have been focusing on the most in writing, I have another series that I'm working on, both largely take place in another world that doesn't actually exist anywhere. So it's all in my imagination. So it's been different shifting back for this story to where the characters and most of the story take place here on Earth, and doing a lot of research and everything to make sure that I get the areas that they're in and where everything takes place, making sure I get things right and feel authentic. There's things that happen over around Stonehenge, and I watched, I don't even know how many hours of travel videos and stuff that are basically like video blogs of people like talking about their journey and stuff, and they're talking about the history of Stonehenge and all of this stuff. And I do a lot of research around magic and lore in the different areas that I have found and were special. For instance, the main portal for Myriad, it's based in Ireland in the Kesh Caves. And there's so many different local lore stories around those. And the thing that really sold it for me is it is one of the fabled doorways to Middle Earth.
Ooh, that's pretty awesome.
I'm like, okay, this is already like talked about being as a magical portal to another world. I think this is perfect. I saw a lot of pictures and read a lot of articles and stuff on traveling there. And it's one of those places that's on my bucket list that I'm like, I need to go here and just like experience this firsthand. When I was first working on it, I've spent a lot of time researching and understanding the magic and stuff that is felt there. And I talked back and forth to a travel writer that he wrote an article on there and took some images and stuff there that I had used early on for inspiration and stuff, and talking to him. and just getting to know like the people that were in those areas and stuff to get it better firsthand and have those contacts to ask and stuff. Just because if it's going to be here, I want it to feel like it's real. I have a young family and stuff, so just picking up and traveling the world isn't a possibility right now. So I'm grateful for the internet. I'm super grateful for travel bloggers that will take video and just talk about what they're seeing and talking about the areas and stuff that they're in. It's really cool to have those resources.
I am addicted to Google Earth. That's like my place to hang out for some reason or other. So I completely understand. And I respect the fact that you want to make it authentic, because people do know what New York City looks like. It's not
right.
Like you can just make that part up. So I love this combination of bringing back and forth and watching you just have fun with it, because that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
You got a series coming up. You got another book in the making. You are a very busy man, young family. What advice would you give to up-and-coming authors who were in this situation going, I want to write a book, but I have all this going? What would you tell them?
Honestly, I would just say, give yourself all the credit in the world, because working a full-time job, raising a family and stuff, that's huge in and of itself. Trying to build a career as an author, you're adding that one more, like, it feels like a full-time job because your mind is constantly thinking about that and working on that. Give yourself snippets of time to work, schedule that into your day. And don't worry about if you don't actually get any words on the page. It doesn't matter as long as you're trying and you're focusing and thinking about it. It's like that is still your writing time. So give yourself that time, allow yourself that, and however that works into your schedule. I typically get most of my time done after my kids are in bed and stuff, when it starts to get quiet. And so most of my writing, it hasn't changed much from when I started writing all of this. Like a lot of it happened late at night and sleep deprivation and all that. But I mean, it helps get the imagination going when you're half asleep. It can be hard, but it's possible. Give yourself a break and give yourself credit, because you're doing a hard thing that some people won't even try and do.
That is such a huge advice. And also the fact that you're giving yourself grace. Sometimes I think we put so much pressure on ourselves and try to do it all, then nothing gets done. So I love the fact that you like give yourself some time, and it's okay not to get words on the page every day. So I love it. So dear, tell us, where can our listeners find the book, where they can learn more about you? Where are you located?
You can find out more about the book, and I got order links at jamesnicholasadams.com. Also recommend subscribing to my newsletter there, because I do a lot of exclusives. My entire cast of beta readers that are for book 2 and for my next book are entirely invite only for my newsletter. I don't send that out on my social media or anything like that. I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I have a TikTok. I don't post there very often. But yeah, most of my posts are Facebook and Instagram. And my website is where the biggest, some of the updates and all the exclusives firsthand. Once I do the cover reveal, my newsletter, people will get it way ahead of anybody else, and probably even some early versions that I won't share anywhere else as well.
So listeners, go ahead, subscribe. You don't want to miss out. There's a lot more exciting things happening for Mr. James, and you want to be in tune and make sure you're staying up to date. Mr. James, are you ready for the lightning round?
All right, I'm ready.
Super easy. Let's see how you do. Soda or juice?
Soda.
Night. I know. You have been drinking soda for a minute. Night or Prince?
Night.
Okay. Skydiving or scuba diving?
Skydiving.
Ooh, you'd have to think about that one. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Here's a little different and see how you do. You probably know this already. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Flight.
Okay. After my long flight this week, I wish I could do that one too, because it would save me lots of time.
And money.
Oh,
and you get to see the world from a perspective other people can't.
And probably a lot safer too. So, dear, do you have any closing remark for us?
Just read whatever you want, unapologetically. It doesn't matter if you're 10. It doesn't matter if you're 90. If you love reading young adult, if you love reading middle grade, do it. It is reading, and it's going to fill your mind and relax you, and you're just going to feel so much better.
Ooh, that is such a great advice to our listeners. Make sure to pick up a book while you're there. Go ahead and sign up for Mr. James' newsletter. You don't want to miss out. It's going to be so much more fun. You get to have some cover reveals, join the ARC team. It's all sorts of exciting things, dear. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, DC. It's been great. It's been a pleasure to be here.
It's been so much fun. Thank you. Thank you. We do want to hear back from you when your next book comes out. So keep us in touch. Let us know what's going on next year. So we want to hear about it. Listeners, go ahead, subscribe. You don't want to miss a single podcast. And also share with a friend. We're always better when we're growing together. And I will see you guys next week with another amazing author. Bye, everyone.